Welcome to GRPC 2020. I'm Dan Wass. As gun owners, we often wonder how some people can be so easily manipulated to fear guns and hate gun owners. How is it that they can see violence at their own doorstep and still denounce gun ownership and refuse to protect themselves and their families? How can they watch innocent children and teachers be slaughtered in schools because bureaucrats decided to remove all armed security and deem the school a gun-free zone? I was talking to an anti-gunner, someone that I've known for several years, and he told me that if someone broke into his home, he would sit them down and have a conversation with them. They don't see gun ownership and self-preservation through a lens of reality, and I'll show you why that is. If I told you gun owners are reckless and that they intentionally put everyone else in danger, you'd think I was crazy. If I told you guns cause people to act violently, you'd dismiss me as some kind of radical nut. And rightfully so, because you know better. But if you didn't know any better, and if I told you gun owners were recklessly and intentionally putting everyone in danger, and that guns cause people to act violently, and I told you this every single day, you might start to believe it. If I told you gun owners are reckless and dangerous and guns cause violence every single day, and in every gun-related news story, and in every anti-gun article that makes the first 2 pages of a Google search, you might actually start to believe this. Now, what if I brought those questions to friends and family and I asked them, are gun owners reckless and dangerous? Do guns cause people to act violently? And what if they told me, of course, because that's the same thing that they heard? What if I decided to do what most people won't do, and I decided that I want to find out for myself if gun owners are reckless and dangerous, and I also wanted to find out if guns actually cause people to act violently. So I researched actual gun-related studies. And all the studies said the same thing, that yes, in fact, gun owners are reckless and dangerous, and more gun restrictions would reduce violence. What if the reports that I found were regurgitated reports from Bloomberg-funded gun studies published in publications like the Huffington Post or New York Times, and then aired on news outlets like CNN and NBC, with so-called experts confirming that gun owners are reckless and dangerous, and the reason there's so much so-called gun violence is because we need more gun control laws? And what if they even came up with that term, gun violence, for the purpose of demonizing guns and pushing their gun control agenda? What if anti-gun politicians and media outlets agreed to always use the term gun violence as often as possible because they understand the power of interpretation, and their goal is to scare people who don't know any better? What if they also provided a solution to their manufactured fear? What's the solution? Well, more gun control laws, of course. They know that they can manipulate society to view guns as violent objects if they shape the narrative correctly. Now, if you didn't know any better, you'd no longer question the accusations. By now, you would believe them wholeheartedly and include these fabricated ideas in your belief structure and your own thought process when the topic of guns comes up. You would have now been convinced that gun owners are reckless and dangerous and guns cause people to act violently. Or even worse, guns themselves are violent. It's brainwashing. This is why anti-gunners are so vigilant. This is why they fight so hard for more gun restrictions. It's because they're scared to death of guns and they're taught to hate gun owners. I mean, how would you feel about someone who you believed was recklessly and intentionally putting your life in danger just so they could have their silly guns? They know in their mind for a fact that gun owners are reckless and dangerous and guns cause violence. This is how anti-Second Amendment radicals create a fear of guns and a hatred toward gun owners. This is their truth, and they will fight to defend their truth. They believe that their activism will save lives because they don't know any better, because that's all they know. They think that they're the good guys. They've been taught wrong, and they're conditioned every night at 6 p.m. when the evening news comes on. This is what we're up against, folks. This is the landscape that we're trying to preserve our rights in. It's a corrupt landscape with a fake narrative and tons of propaganda and lies to support it. So what can we do? Well, we reshape the narrative. We push back on the fake news. We tell them there's no such thing as gun violence. We tell them that there's only human violence. And we bring them to the cause of that human violence. We show them how violence occurs. We point out the government-created dependency, otherwise known as the welfare system. We point out sanctuary cities where mayors let maniacs, domestic terrorists, and anarchists run wild. We show them how children are being raised to devalue the lives of others. We show them how state governors are releasing criminals from prison. We remind them how Democrat mayors and governors in towns and cities just like theirs are defunding police departments to side with a radical left-wing ideology. And we remind them how those very same Democrats are working hard to disarm them and convince them to denounce gun ownership, so they too will be dependent on their government. We remind them that it was Joe Biden who introduced the Gun-Free School Zones Act in 1990. Where innocent children and teachers have been killed at a rate of almost double since the bill was signed into law. We ask them if they like the idea of being unarmed, helpless, and dependent upon their government and a defunded police department, or if they'd prefer having the ability to defend themselves and be able to exercise their own free will. You see, their fear of guns is stronger than their fear of being a victim in an attack. That's how they've been trained. Their fear of guns is stronger than their fear of being a victim. As a matter of fact, they've been taught to believe that criminals are victims of society. They've been taught to develop a compassion for violent criminals. We ask them to look back at what caused their fear of guns. We help them see how the media influence changed their perspective. We ask them to compare their fear of catching a virus to their fear of guns. And we ask them what was the driving force behind the messaging. How are they influenced? Fear. It's the strongest human motivator. And if we can help the fearful recognize how they've been manipulated, we may be able to wake them up. This year and every year, we choose freedom over tyranny. This year, when it comes time to vote, we remind our government who they work for, because the Second Amendment is not a privilege. It's our right.